Good morning, Africa, and of course, the rest of the world. Welcome to another episode of The Conversation here on TOS TV Network, your digital first pan African network. I am Adesu Osuyi.
And I am Osaze Isesele. Good morning, Africa.
Okay, how are you feeling this morning, though?
I'm doing good. Nowadays, this is midweek. Today is Wednesday.
Yes.
So tell me, what has been the most interesting story for you from Monday through to Wednesday?
The most interesting story for me I think it's still the farmer herders clash thing in the southwest region. I think I like the way it's playing out.
Okay.
I'm interested to see how this is going to end. You know, it still boils down to the issue of restructuring, and are we going to tilt that way? You know, I'm just interested in, you know, it's having development. It's gone down to the Nnamdi Kanu story in the east. You know, the Sunday Igbo. You know, it's just like different factions of it, and I'm quite interested in it. Yeah.
All right, so we will now go straight to development across Africa, where we bring you trending stories happening across the continent. We will be right back after this break.
Welcome back. Now we're going to quickly move into development stories from across the African continent. And we're going to start from Libya, where water shortage is causing humanitarian disaster, or is going to cause humanitarian disaster according to the UNICEF. Now, on Monday, February 1st, 2021, the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, raised alarm over the increasing shortage of water in Libya. Now, this UNICEF expressed as a serious threat to millions of people in the north of African country, especially children. Now, in a statement released by UNICEF, it says over 4 million people, including 1.5 million children, will face imminent water problems if immediate solutions are not found and implemented. Now, the multinational body expressed that the prolonged crisis in the country has impaired the country's water facilities, and that's quite sad because water is quite essential.
Yeah. And away from Libya, we move on to Angola. Police in Angola killed several separatists during protest. The Angola police have killed several separatists during the protest in the country's northeast over the weekend. This was confirmed by authorities and rights defenders, raising renewed concerns over long history of police brutality. The crackdown took place against an unauthorized demonstration in the diamond mining town of Kafunfo in the remote Luanda North province, around 750 kilometers east of the capital, Luanda, and near Angola's border with the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, members of the Luanda Chukwi Protectorate movement took to the streets on Saturday without the required permission from local authorities. At Luanda Chukwi Protectorate movement is one of two active secessionist groups in Angola.
Well, I'm still staying with Libya. In Libya, delegates are gathered or have gathered in Geneva to pick a new prime minister amidst the rising tension, in the country. Now, a Libyan Political Dialogue Forum's convention kicked off on Monday in Geneva in the presence of the UN acting special representative of the Secretary General, Stephanie Williams. The meeting is expected to last until February 5th and is supposed to vote on the positions of a three-member presidency council and the Prime Minister of Libya. In accordance with the roadmap adopted by the forum in Tunis in mid-November, now 21 candidates have been nominated to be Prime Minister and 24 to sit on the presidency council.
Now we move over to South Sudan. South Sudan tops the list of most corrupt East African countries. Now, South Sudan has once again been ranked the most corrupt country in the East African region. A 2020 report by Transparency International ranked the country the second most corrupt across the globe, followed by Somalia. Syria also took the lead. The Corruption Perception Index, known as CPI, ranks 180 countries and territories by their perceived levels of public sector corruption, drawing on 13 expert assessments at surveys of business executives.
Now, I'm sure Nigeria can relate to that.
Wow.
Okay, moving on to COVID-19 stories. This one is quite interesting. It says rhino poaching in South Africa has falls during COVID-19 lockdown. Now, the number of rhinos killed in South Africa in 2020 has fallen by 33%. A sharp drop in poaching due in part to restrictions of movement to contain COVID-19, and that's from an official source on Monday. During the COVID hard lockdown period, we had a significant reduction in poacher incursions into the Kruger. Environment Minister Barbara Creasy said in a statement. A slight increase in poaching was recorded in December 2020 when the government lifted up some coronavirus restrictions. I'm sure environmentalists will be really happy with that news, especially people that been preaching against poaching. Don't kill the animals; their lives matter too. Yeah, I mean, COVID has done that.
All right, away from developments across Africa, we will now bring you our COVID-19 update. And when we get back, it will be time for newspaper review. The conversation will continue shortly. Please do stay tuned.
TOS TV Network mobile app is now available. You can now catch up on our breaking news, stream our programs live, watch out for the latest update on sports and politics as they unfold. You can also get notifications for our upcoming programs and events. All these on our TOS TV Network mobile app, available on Apple Store and Google Play Store. TOS TV News from Africa by Africans.
Being a journalist means in-depth analysis that unravels hidden truths, that question the status quo and fact-checks government.
These criminal elements hiding under the cloak of surveillance contractors are the APC elements.
Do you have facts to prove that? Being a journalist means waking up every day with a burning desire for peace, equity, and justice for all citizens.
We're being told that the choice you have is to take the lesser of two evils.
It means patriotism via the prism of objectivity and accountability. It means giving my platform to the masses to discuss issues that matter to them.
Some of them, if they bring budget and the budget they look, some of them sleep. They're going to ask how much you are on. I have it.
Thereby shaping government policies and laws. My name is Osasu Igbenegbu, and I am the People's Journalist.
And that was the COVID-19 update from across Africa. Over 3.5 million, COVID-19 cases and almost 100,000 deaths. That's quite sad. Please do take precautions so that we can see a reduction in the number of cases of COVID-19. Now moving over to the newspaper headlines for this morning, I'm going to start with the Blueprint newspaper. And of course, since we're talking about COVID-19, I'm going to start from the COVID-19 headline. It says, COVID-19 vaccine safe, effective. That's coming from the PTF. The PTF is assuring Nigerians that COVID-19 vaccines are safe. And then it has two riders under that. Urges Nigerians to embrace it. And then says State House Clinic to get testing laboratory. So if you're worried about, the COVID-19 vaccine and you say you don't want to take it, they're telling you the PTF is saying that the COVID vaccines are safe. And under that, Buhari Area Council chair's father kidnapped. And then so I'm going to move over to the very obvious headlines there this morning. For refusing to hold ransom meeting, bandits kill 25, abduct 50 in Niger communities. Now, there are 5 riders under that headlines. The first one says 3 others killed in Lere, Birmingham, Gwari. And then stop ejecting Fulani herders. NEF warns Nigerians. Don't attach ethnic religious coloration to crime. That's coming from the NSCDC. And this menace shall come to pass. That's coming from Governor El Rufai. And the last rider says Nigeria lost 30,000 in 12 years, 3 million displaced. That's 30,000 persons in 12 years and 3 million more displaced. That is on the Blueprint newspaper this morning. And then The headline in pink: 7.65 billion naira fraud. EFCC wants ex-Abia Governor Carlo tried in Lagos. That's still a developing story, actually. And Transparency International CPI reports political. PGF boss. Our AAA rating affirms prudence, risk management. That's coming from the African Development Bank. Electoral Act targeted at reducing election violence, says Lawan. Why pay-as-you-go model won't work in Nigeria? That's coming from multi-choice. If you want more stories on, if you want to know more about these stories, especially the insecurity issue, you should get yourself a copy of the Blueprints newspaper.
All right, still on the newspaper review, we move over to the Daily Times, and very at the top of the newspaper, you have this headline: National Assembly to pass new Electoral Act in June. National Assembly to pass new Electoral Act in June. And you have at the very front of that newspaper, federal government warns on forfeited assets misappropriation. You can find that story on page 2 of the Daily Times. And underneath that story, you have COVID vaccine. Nigeria to get 80 million vaccine doses, says Fayemi at Chatham House. Nigeria to get 80 million vaccine doses, says Fayemi at Chatham House. That story is on page 3 of the Daily Times. Insecurity. Advise President Buhari to protect Nigerians. PDP urges USA. All that. That story is also on page 2 of the Daily Times. And we also have this story. It says fuel scarcity. Federal government Labour gets report on PMS amid fuel scarcity fears by government. You would also find that on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper. So you could pick up the Daily Times newspaper today and get more insights on those stories.
Moving over to the national economy, this one is for people who are enthusiastic about, foreign exchange and all of that. This is NESG projects 2.9% economic growth for Nigeria in 2021. Two riders under that. The first one says, tied forecast on expected increase in oil price, capital expenditure. And group's projection beats IMF's 1.5% forecast. That's the very obvious headline in national economy this morning. And the second obvious headline says, why we extended deadline on NIM-SIM linkage. Now, if you're interested in that, because I know lots of Nigerians be like, I've been saying, oh, the government are going to extend it. We know how it works here. But if you want to know why they keep extending it, you should get a copy of the national economy. And then at the bottom of the national economy, 80 million doses of vaccine to be available in 2021. That's on page 5 of the National Economy newspaper. And still on page 5, 12 times awaits rice smugglers. That's coming from the Nigerian customs. That's basically the headlines on the National Economy this morning.
All right, we move over to leadership. We move over to leadership newspaper, and this is a very gaping headline right there. It says, "Return home, Northern elders tell headers." Return home, Northern elders tell headers, and it's got about 3 to 4 riders there. It says, seek justice for Fulani communities attacked in Southwest. Ask governors to provide accommodation for evicted herders. Stop anarchy. Adopt ranching. Naba Utomi Mailafia tells federal government. Now, on top of that, you find FG warns farmers against early planting. Federal government warns farmers against early planting. And also at the top of that story, you have NESG project Nigeria's early exit from recession. The National Economic Summit Group, NESG, projects Nigeria's early exit from recession. And then also under Constitution Review, you have the story. It says, Senate rejects voting rights for married underage girls. Senate rejects voting rights for married underage girls. Still on leadership newspaper, you have 25 killed, 40 abducted in Niger communities. Also, we have 80 million doses of vaccine to be available in 2021, says governors. So for more stories this morning, you can get a copy of the leadership newspaper.
I'm quite interested in the voting rights for married underage girls, because I'm wondering, does being married make make you an adult, that gives you, voting rights and all of that. I'm quite interested in that story, and I think
Yeah, of course, in Nigeria, there's this. I think that's more cultural. There's this respect that is given to a lady so long as she's married, irrespective of the age.
Of the age, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm quite interested in that. I think I'll have to read up on that. Okay, moving over to the last headline daily for this morning. That's the Daily Trust. I'm going to be starting with the very gaping headline on the Daily Trust this morning. Attacks on Fulanese in Southwest. Act now before we lose Nigeria, Tofa tells Buhari. And then the first rider under that. One killed as hoodlums raise headers settlement market in Ogun. Northern Elders Forum urge Fulani to resist temptation. Igboho's strategy may lead to tribal war. That's coming from Nance. That's quite sad. It's sad to see that this is happening at this time.
Yeah, if you look at the pictures and the videos all over the internet, it's really, really sad.
Yes.
And it makes you, if you're a true patriotic Nigerian, it really makes you want to wonder where we're heading from here.
Yes, exactly. I hope we don't start a tribal war with all of this. And then on the left-hand side of the Daily Trust newspaper, Kano residents protest against encroachment of 8 ground. That's the prayer ground. And then in the middle of that, 2023, INEC moves to create new polling units. Bandits kill 21, abduct 40 in fresh Niger attack. That is on the Daily Trust this morning. And then this is coming from the IGP, just at the bottom of the Daily Trust in black, painted in black. IGP, you are trampling on the law, lawyers tell Buhari. And that is on, appointing a new Inspector General of Police. And then under that, Nigeria's economy to grow by 2.9%. That's coming from the NESG. Gunmen abduct father of Abuja council boss. FG, that's federal government, varsity workers meeting deadlocked. That is the very, those are the headlines on the Daily Trust this morning. If you're interested in any of these stories, quite interesting headlines this morning, actually, quite interesting stories. If you want to, get the meat of all of these stories, get yourself a copy of any of the dailies that we've reviewed here this morning. If you cannot get the hard copy, you can also get the e-copy online.
Just in case you're just joining us, it's still the conversation reaching you live from TOS TV, your digital first Pan-African network. We will be going on a break, and when we come back, it will be time for the big story. Do stay tuned.
North to South Africa, East to West Africa, TOS TV Network is your digital-first Pan-African news network, bringing you news from across the continent. Visit our website www.tostvnetwork.com and follow us on social media at TOS TV Network on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. Watch us on television, channel 138 on TSTV Africa. North to South Africa, East to West Africa, TOS TV Network is your digital-first Pan-African news network, bringing you news from across the continent. Visit our website www.tostvnetwork.com and follow us on social media at TOS TV Network on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Watch us on television, channel 138 on TSTV Africa. North to South Africa, East to West Africa, East to West Africa, TOS TV Network is your digital-first Pan-African news network, bringing you news from across the continent. Visit our website www.tostvnetwork.com and follow us on social media at TOS.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us on The Conversation here on TOS TV, your digital first Pan-African TV network. All right, it's time for us to take a big story here on The Conversation, and we're looking at Citizens' top 10 priorities on Electoral Act amendment. Earlier on the newspaper review, we read two headlines relating to our big story this morning. Now, the 9th National Assembly, under the leadership of the Senate President Ahmed Lawan and the Speaker of the House of Representatives Femi Gbajabiamila, promised Nigerians a new electoral act by the first quarter of 2021. Accordingly, the Senate and House of Representatives Joint Committee on INEC and Electoral Matters invited citizens in December 2020 to make proposals for amendments to the Electoral Act 2010. Now, the public hearing, which had wide participation from citizens, civil society organizations, political parties, professional bodies, security agencies, women-led initiatives, youth, and persons with disabilities-led groups, saw the coalition of citizens' recommendation to amend the Electoral Act. Now, to that end, there is a citizens' top 10 priorities on Electoral Act amendment. Now, to discuss this with us today on The Conversation, to also share some salient points on this topic, is Cynthia Mbamalu, the Director of Programs, Yaga Africa. Cynthia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good
All right, it's good to have you here this morning.
Thanks.
Now, let's quickly lay a background overview of electoral laws in Nigeria. Can you talk to us about that?
So the electoral law basically provides a legal framework to regulate the conduct of elections in Nigeria. Okay. And like we know, we have the Constitution, the Electoral Act, and that's when you talk of the legal framework. And then you also have what you call the INEC policies and guidelines. Okay. So for the legal framework, when it comes to legislation, we have the Constitution and the Electoral. And this period, we have the electoral reform ongoing. Specifically, there is the amendment or proposed amendment to the Electoral Act 2010. Okay. And there are certain reforms that would require amendment of the Constitution because the Constitution provides for certain guidelines also to regulate the elections or conduct of elections in Nigeria. However, the conversation this morning is around the Electoral Act specific because the Constitution requires a longer process. And for the Constitution to be amended, you need both majority votes to third majority votes in the Senate and the House of Representatives. Those are the two chambers in the National Assembly. And then you also need 22/3 majority of the state houses of assembly. So it's a longer process that has its own committee in both chambers of the National Assembly. However, for the Electoral Act, all you need is to have majority votes in support of the proposals in both chambers. That's the Senate and the House of Representatives. Okay. And when that is done, you need to also have the president assent to the electoral. So it doesn't go to the state this time around. Okay. However, it requires a national process. So the process has started, like you mentioned, there are certain priority, which Yaga, working with some other groups, identified as top priorities. Also based on conversations on social media, because last year, under the Fixed Elections campaign, we had citizens share their views. We had this video campaign, a 1-minute video on what you want to see amended in the Electoral Act. And those are certain priorities that we believe if the National Assembly considers these priorities, then we truly have an electoral act that meets the needs of citizens. We don't just want an act that satisfies political interest of politicians, because that is what it usually is. You have a lot of political interest influencing the process, and less focus on what the people actually want to promote the credibility of the elections.
Okay, before I ask you a question on how to ensure that there's no much political influencing in the process, let's look at the citizens' top 10 priorities on electoral law amendment, so we can educate our listeners and viewers about that.
Okay, so I'll pick some of them that are, because for some others, they've been considered. So I know one important point is around financial independence of INEC. INEC, in previous amendments, the INEC is Independent National Electoral Commission. In previous amendments, was granted financial autonomy, so it gets its sources from as on the first line charge. However, the challenge is with the timeline of release of funds. So, for instance, in the previous 2019 general elections, we had funds released very close deal, so it affects planning, logistics, and what have you. So one of the proposals is an amendment to sections 3 of the Act to to mandate that the funds for elections be released at least 180 days to the elections. So if you do 180 days, it's about 6 months. That's if you do 31 plus plus or minus days in the month. And the idea is at least 6 months to the elections. If INEC receives its fund, it would help its planning for elections. We would have less incidents of postponement for logistics purposes. The other issue that is also very important, I always want to jump, there's a conversation around having the polling unit level results uploaded. Now, why is this important? Because after elections, it takes citizens a lot of time before they can even access the results. Most times, what we have, we follow the process, is the Electoral Commission's announcement of the results the announcements. Most of us watch it or see it on social media, but you hardly have access to polling unit level results. So one of the things is to amend section 71 so that after elections, this is on the polling unit, is on the website of the Electoral Commission. The other conversation, I wouldn't follow it. I'll just there's a conversation around the rights of persons visually impaired or voters. That is, there's a proposal so what we have in the Electoral Act is the use of the word may. Now, may is discretionary for lawyers. Shall is mandatory. So to review the use of the term INEC may to shall, the Commission shall make provisions for persons who for blind voters or visually impaired voters. And the idea is mandate the Commission to do that so that INEC also starts seeing this as compulsory to make specific provisions for persons with disability in the electoral process. Then there's a conversation also around the cost of governance. Cost of nomination. Now, this is very dear to me, and it's becoming quite controversial, and feelers we're getting is that the lawmakers are not in support of this, meaning it may be very may be debated or it may not even make it in, and citizens want this included. This is important for different reasons. One, the process of party primaries, that is the first process where candidates emerge, right? So at the end, voters, we vote based on what parties produce, because only parties can produce candidates in an election. Now, if the process is flawed, if the process only produces individuals who bought their way through the process, it means we're still going to be left with the options of voting between the devil and the deep blue sea, if you want to even look at it, because most times we don't even have options per se to say, okay, this is who I want to vote for. And that is because the primaries process is flawed. So one of the proposals is that Section 87 regulates conduct of party primaries in the Electoral Act. Now, if you look at that section, one proposal is we do not want political parties to impose criteria or requirement to contest in primaries that are not requirements recognized in the Constitution.
Okay.
That is one arm of it. The other arm is on the cost of nomination. Remember previous elections for presidential to contest tickets to nominations for parties like the APC and PDP. You're going as high as 20-something million. Just cost of nomination. This does not include all you spend for campaign and what have you. For same also if you go down to governors, to Senate and House of Reps and state assemblies and even area council elections in Abuja. Now what this has done, it has restricted women, for instance, young persons, even persons with disability. So if you can't even purchase nomination in the parties, then how would you even contest? And one of the proposals is we want the Electoral Act to regulate how parties impose nomination fees. And that includes both expression of interest and tickets and what have you. All the form cost for nomination should be regulated. And we're proposing, our proposal is for the president, parties should not charge beyond 5 million. So you can charge whatever, but it shouldn't exceed 5 million. For offices like for the area council, because I know lots of young persons contest at the local level and also at state assemblies. Their proposals not exceeding 100,000, 200,000, 500. It goes on, but the top is 5 million. That's our proposal. However, we know that there was a proposal by Senator Omo Agege, who was proposing 10 million for president, and then that's the highest. Now, we believe this is important because if you do that, you give women, young people, even candidates with capacity and competence to purchase those funds, because most times elections is not like a business venture, right? So most people don't want to imagine spending over 20 million to get tickets and then they can't even win the primaries, right? So we want to make the process more inclusive and more citizens friendly. So that is the proposal on nomination and primaries regulation. Then there's also the conversations around, I'll go to the ones important to me, inclusion of women, young persons and persons with disability. So sections 31, we're looking at that section. What it does ordinarily is provides for parties' submission of candidates list to INEC. And one of the proposal is to include another subsection to that particular section, requesting that parties in submission of their candidate list to the Electoral Commission actually provides, ensures that their candidate list includes women, young persons, and persons with disability. And for women, that at least 2/3 of the candidates, that we don't have more than a sex or a gender, more than 2/3 of the particular gender. That is the proposal. The idea is we don't want to say, okay, just women, but we don't want dominance of one particular gender or sex. Actually, there's more demand to say at least 50% to have gender balance. And because the argument is, why do you keep using 2/3 or 35% or 30% for women? Why not even make it gender balance? But that is one of the proposals actually. Then there's a conversation around, so if you look at sections 104 of the Act, that talks on, still under inclusion. It looks at election of vice chairman and vice chairman of area council. That's the Abuja. You know, Abuja elections are conducted, the local government elections in Abuja are conducted during the general elections. So proposing that we don't have a chairperson, a chairman. The word, I feel like the Act is so male dominated because the pronouns are masculine, right? And one of our proposals actually, why not have a he, she, pronouns that reflects the same sexes, but there's a proposal that we don't have both chairman and vice chairman from the same gender. There's also a proposal for inclusion. So I'll just go quickly because I don't know the time I have. But yes, there's a conversation around early voting and conversation around regulation of electoral offenses, so rather imposing stricter penalty for electoral offenders, and then security deployment. One of the proposals around security deployment is to have security personnel deployed to ensure that they abide by the code of conduct by the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, ICES. And then there's a conversation around early voting is important because that's, I think, sections 25. That is important because election day observers, media practitioners, even election workers like ad hoc officials can't vote because they are deployed. But early voting, what this would do, it would allow these categories of persons to vote before elections. And then technology and election, I think that is very important. How can I miss that? Now, technology is important because it helps promote transparency in the process. And lots of young persons actually agitating for deployment of technology at different levels. One, for accreditation. Already, INEC deploys a smart card reader, which I believe can be improved on, but we don't have that in the law. So you can't even use data from the smart card reader to defend or challenge a case in court.
Where there are discrepancies?
Yes, yeah. So the court would not recognize that because it's not in the Electoral Act. And one of the proposals is we need the sections in the Electoral Act amended to enable INEC deploy technology to accredit voters. The other level is around voting. We also want that section, I think that's section 52 if I'm not mistaken, to amend that section to empower INEC to deploy, to conduct elections either by electronic voting or any other method that it does. The idea is not to make it so compulsory, but to give INEC the power to do that, so that for areas where they can deploy technology for electronic voting, that would be done. And the other layer is around transmission and collation of results. One of the things we think is important is citizens want to follow how the results move from polling unit to ward, to local government collation, to state collation, and even to the national for presidential elections. And what we have is a manual process. You move a ballot paper, you move with the result sheet rather, from the polling unit to the collation and the different levels of collation. And one of the proposals is we want the act amended so that INEC can introduce electronic transmission and collation as a complementary process. So not necessarily to substitute that. We want to still have the manual, but we want to have the technology deployed. That way, it ensures better oversight. Because whatever figures, if figures transmitted from polling unit and you start seeing discrepancies at ward collation or LGA collation, then you can know where the problem started from. And citizens can also follow through. We saw deployment in Edo and Ondo governorship elections where, for instance, INEC deployed the Z-pad. Results were transmitted, were rather uploaded from polling units, the polling unit level results on the website, the INEC elections results website. So people could actually, you can still go on that website now and click Edo, Ondo, and you see polling unit level results. So we want the Electoral Act to be amended to enable INEC to do this electronic transmission and collation of results. And I think the last part, I think one I'm missing is diaspora voting. Because citizens in diaspora, we have a lot of Nigerians living outside Nigeria, are advocating for inclusion in the process. And we also have countries already trying that out. In fact, countries like South Africa even have prisoners voting, you know. So the proposal is, can we give it a shot? Maybe not do worldwide now, because you also want to start at a pace that you can easily manage and guarantee transparency. So one of the proposals is to enable, to amend the act to introduce diaspora voting, in the sense that provisions around registration of voters, so section 6, sections 9, sections 12, those regulate registration of voters and what have you, to introduce just to those provisions that citizens can register, be it in the consular, high commission, or embassy, Nigerians embassy in those countries, in those territories that are not in Nigeria, and they can register, they can vote there, so that those can be managed. I know this is controversial because even Nigerians in Nigeria do not think it's possible, but I believe that our laws need to be futuristic, and we need to think beyond now and ask ourselves, as a people, where do we want our democracy to get to, and how can we plan for the future? If countries in Africa are already trying out some of this, and countries in Africa are already guaranteeing women inclusion, youth inclusion in the process, deploying technology in the process, I don't think Nigeria should be left behind. I think we need to jump on in that.
Okay, actually, I was going to ask you, what your call for action is to lawmakers, but I think you've actually captured that in everything that you said just now. So my question is, do you see all of this now being implemented in it? Because I know we're going up towards for the 2023 elections, general elections. Do you see all of this being implemented in just 1 minute?
I think it's possible. One, if the National Assembly has a political will to do so, it will be done. All that limits this is political will, and the president wants to leave a legacy. And I believe it is important in his best interest that he also assent to the law. But we need National Assembly to consider the wishes and desires of the people. Do not just make it a political process that meets just political interest, but also consider national interest and the future of our democracy.
Okay.
All right, before we let you go, Cynthia and Bamalu, I know that Yaga Africa has been at the forefront of pushing the Electoral Act amendment. Can you just share with us a few things that your organization have been doing as regards that?
Yeah, so one, we have the Fixed Elections campaign, and Fixed Elections basically is a movement that mobilizes citizens to demand reforms of the electoral process or the electoral laws. And so one of that, we have specific support to the committees. That's the committee in the Senate and the House of Reps on INEC and electoral matters, working with the committees to provide some of our insight on the process and also help them do the work. The other is also building bridge between the Nigerians or citizens and the National Assembly. So we have what we call Citizens Town Hall, where people can debate on their issues. We're actually planning some very soon in this month to get more citizens to share their views on the process and a lot more around data visualization. I think we're big on data visualization and analysis of the law, what we have, what people should care about, and making it simple for citizens to understand. So I think there's a lot. I know it's a few minutes, but those are the most important for now, because this is the in the marathon, this is the second to the last lane, because once we have it adopted at National Assembly, the next focus will be to put pressure on the president to assent on the bill, on the proposed bill.
All right, thank you so much, Cynthia Mbamalu, Director of Programs, Yaga Africa. She's been talking to us on the citizens' top 10 priorities as regards Electoral Act amendment. Thank you very much for being a part of the show. You can join us and be part of the conversation on our Twitter page on www.tostvnetwork.com, or you can also go to our Facebook and Twitter and Instagram page to drop your comments at TOS TV Network. It's time for us to go for our social media trends, and we'll be right back.
Thank you so much. That was very insightful.
Thank you.
For someone like me.
Welcome back. It's still the conversation on TOS TV, your digital first Pan-African news network. All right, it's time for us to take what's trending on social media, and to do that for us is Adesuwa Osui.
Yes, I'm doing that because this is my favorite part of the show. You should know that by now. It's the what's trending or trending in social media segment. It's what I get to talk about, controversial issues that made way to, top of the trend table, especially on Twitter, because I said Twitter trends are usually very, very interesting. Now, the issue of paternity fraud and DNA testing is back to the fore. Earlier, I think that was 2 months ago, it was the central attraction, the central discussion. And now it's back again, but this time it was with a judge of a high court in Delta State that released a press statement saying 3 of his children or not is. After he did a DNA test, he found out that the children he has been taken care of, that have been under his care, they know him as daddy, are actually not his children. He had those kids with his first wife, and he and his current wife has been the one taking care of the children. I don't know why they had to do a paternity test this time, but they did one, and then the kids are not his. And that has sparked conversation on Twitter. So I'm going to read out a few tweets here for you. Now, the judge is actually, Anthony Okorodas. So this guy at equal_Bani says, so a judge of High Court of Delta State conducted DNA tests on the 3 children purportedly born to him by his estranged wife. It turned out that he is not the father of all the children. While 2 are undergraduates in the university, the last child is already 17. Women, eh? Then this person, Nwa Ikeoku, says, am I the only one that feels indifferent about the purported press release by a supposed Delta State High Court judge over the DNA of his children? Till now, I'm still ruminating about the purpose of the press release. And then the last tweet here says, dear Delta High Court judge, please have second DNA test done. It is worth it. Now, I feel the concern in that last tweet, that lady saying, please do it again, it's worth it. Because if the last kid is 17.
Yeah, but I saw someone responding to that tweet early hours of the morning saying that they have done another test and
it's
still the same. It's still the same.
I'm trying to picture, the devastation that man would like. I don't know. I don't understand it.
Yeah,
I really don't.
You've never won the shows before, so you can't tell what it
That's the
feels
thing,
like.
I
I know that it will be really, really disturbing. Yeah.
And there's a thing with people saying paternity test or paternity fraud is new to the African scene, and I think that's not true. I think it's just now that it's coming to the fore, because when the first time the issue of DNA testing came around and people were talking about it, lots of Nigerian women, lots of African women, and some men kicked against it, like, in Africa, we don't do stuff like that.
Culture.
It's not a culture. But paternity fraud, it's actually a crime. Do you know? A crime against humanity, actually. Do you know how devastating it will be for me to find out that kids that I've been taking care of, actually not mine?
Wow, it's really, really devastated. I don't know. I just hope that
You're a man. How would you feel about it?
Okay.
That you were married to somebody and then she just brought not 2 but 3 kids to you and said they're your kids,
of
and
course.
eventually you found that they're not yours.
Irrespective of gender, whosoever is found in such a position is going to be naturally disheartening. You understand? It's going to be disturbing. So it's going to be very, very. It's going to be frustrating because you wouldn't know what to do. I watched a clip, but that is something, not in Africa anyway, and this man was really crying. He was in tears, having to come to terms with the fact that this is a child I've been with for 20-something years. It's really, really disturbing. But then I think, I don't know, I just pray that everyone in that position will be able to find comfort.
I hope none of you watching this ever have to be in that position, and I hope you don't do that to somebody as a lady, because that cannot happen to me, because you cannot bring a child that's
I think from the get-go, that's where it starts. From the get-go, you should think of it this way. If I'm going to tell the person now, you should think of the cost value attached to, let me put it this way, the emotional cost value. Look at, if I tell this person immediately, how grave is it going to be? If I leave it for 15, 10, 20 years and I tell the person, how grave is it going to be? I believe if you measure it at the end of the day, you should be able to say, it's time for, I think this is the best time to let you know, that this is the situation of things. All right, I wish we could go on and on with the conversation, but this is where we'll be drawing the curtain on this midweek edition of the conversation. Do follow us on our social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TOS TV Network. Log on to our website www.tostvnetwork.com to enjoy more of our programs and news on politics, development, business, and so much more. Until we come your way again tomorrow, I'm Osaze.
And I am Ade Suwalsi. Thank you so much for joining.
to Libya.